Hey ladies, so welcome back to Quarantine Bible Study. This is our second round of this. So about a year and a half ago, I did a Bible study by Kelly Minter called No Other Gods. And it's essentially a look at modern day idolatry. And it's excellent if you're looking for something to go through during this time when you're at home. But it really revolutionized the way that I looked at a typical, a very popular Old Testament story, and that's the story of Leah and Rachel. And as you might have guessed, that is what we are going to be looking at today. The story is found in the book of Genesis. Mostly what we're going to be looking at is in chapters 29 and 30. But Genesis, this part of Genesis really kind of lays out like a story. And so if you wanted to back up a little bit to kind of get into the context and then read on to see how things really end up for this family, it would be a great place for you to read right now. But that is where we're going to be looking at Leah and Rachel. So let's set the scene. We have Jacob. Jacob is a young man, and he has been sent away by his father Isaac to find a wife. They don't want him to take a wife from amongst the people that they're living around at this time. So he sends him to his uncle, whose name is Laban. And when Jacob arrives at Laban's, he sees Laban's younger daughter, Rachel, and he just falls in love with her from the get-go. So Jacob stays and he works for Laban for about a month before Laban says, "Hey, did you want me to pay you? What did you want me to pay you for this work that you're doing?" And Jacob tells Laban, "I will work for you for 7 years if you will allow me to marry Rachel, your younger daughter." Now Laban agrees and Jacob works for 7 years. And the word actually tells us that the 7 years felt like just a few days to Jacob because of the love that he held for Rachel. And at the end of the 7 years, we have a wedding. But Laban is a tricky guy, and he slips his older daughter Leah in during the wedding night to Jacob. And so when Jacob awakes the next morning, he discovers that he has actually married Leah instead of Rachel. Now, Jacob is naturally and understandably very upset about this. And so he goes and he confronts Laban, and Laban says, "Hey, look, it's not customary around here for the younger daughter to get married before the older daughter." And he tells Jacob that if he will finish the week-long wedding festival with Leah, he will get to have Rachel as his wife, provided he's willing to work for Laban for another 7 years. Well, not that he has a lot of choice in the matter, but Jacob agrees. And so he finishes the week-long wedding festival with Leah. He's then given Rachel for his wife, but he has to stay and work for Laban for the foreseeable future. After Jacob has married these two sisters, Leah becomes pregnant and she starts to bear children. In fact, in this first part of the story, she bears Jacob 4 sons, but Rachel is barren. She is not able to bear any children, and it's just absolutely devastating for her. So she takes matters into her own hands, and she takes her servant, Bilhah, and she marries Bilhah off to Jacob, to her husband, so that this maidservant can conceive children with her husband, and then Rachel can claim those children as her own. So this works, and Bilhah conceives 2 children with Jacob that Rachel claims as her own, 2 sons. Well, Leah sees this, and Leah, after the first 4 children, she has ceased bearing children at this point. So she sees what Rachel has done, and she has got to one-up her naturally. So she takes her servant Zilpah and has Jacob marry her so that Zilpah can conceive children on Leah's behalf. And it works. Zilpah actually bears 2 children, 2 sons for Jacob as well, that Leah claims for her own. Well, at this point, the jealousy just continues to abound, and Rachel feels like she has to do something. So one day she sees that Leah's oldest son, Reuben, has these mandrakes, which I did a little bit of reading, and it appears that possibly during this time that they thought that this could aid in fertility, possibly. But whatever it was, Rachel was desperate to have these things. And so she agrees to trade with Leah. She will get the mandrakes, and she will give Leah one night with their husband, Jacob. Well, from this encounter, Leah conceives again, and she bears a son, and then another son, and then a daughter, before she finally ceases having children for good. And then at this point, it says that God finally hears Rachel's cry. He opens her womb, and she is able to bear a child, a son, and she names him Joseph. Okay, so that is the part of our story that we're going to look at. And it's an absolute train wreck, right? It's an absolute mess. These are two sisters, Leah and Rachel, married to the same man, both very, very unhappy. Why are they so unhappy? Well, I think they're unhappy because they're experiencing firsthand what happens to us when we fall victim to idolatry. Now, I know idolatry is not a word that we throw around a lot nowadays. And so what I mean by that is that idolatry, in the context that we're going to talk about it, is anything in our lives that takes God's rightful place. Anything that we allow to have more importance in our lives than we give to God. Idols can be bad things, but idols can also be good things that we allow to have too much importance in our lives. Leah's idol is Jacob and the love that she wants from him. Leah understands why she's married to Jacob. She's married to Jacob because her father tricked him, and that was the only way that he could get Rachel, whom he loved, to be his wife. Now, that had to be beyond hard for Leah to live with, right? Like that's awful. What a terrible reality for her to live in. But her fixation on getting Jacob's love and attention completely follows her into motherhood. In this first set of childbearing, if you will, she bears 4 sons for Jacob. And even when she's naming them, it's all about Jacob loving her and getting love and attention and devotion from Jacob. And it's like each one of these children bears the burden of, are you going to be the one that's going to make my husband love me? It says first is Reuben, and she says, now my husband will love me. Second is Simeon, and she says, the Lord has given him to me because I am hated. Third is Levi, where she says, maybe now my husband will become attached to me. And it's not until her 4th son, Judah, that she says, this time I will praise the Lord. It's like the first 3 times, it wasn't even about praising God for this beautiful life and this child. It was all about, is this going to be the time that my husband is going to love me and draw close to me? And then there's the point in the story later where she actually trades these mandrakes for a night with her own husband. She is desperate for his love and attention, and that is her idol. And then we have Rachel, and Rachel's idol is motherhood. She has the undying love of her husband. This man has worked for 14 years for the right to call Rachel his wife. But she's unhappy because she is barren. She's unable to have children. Now, we know culturally and socially this was a huge deal in biblical times. You were considered cursed by God sometimes if you couldn't bear children. But for Rachel, it was almost more than that. It becomes this obsession, this idol, and she's so unhappy. And she actually gets angry at Jacob. At one point in the story, she tells Jacob, give me children or I will surely die. And it says that Jacob's anger is kindled against Rachel because he says, am I God? I'm not intentionally withholding children from you. But it was such an obsession for her. It was something that she was so desperate to have, and as we have already talked about, she's willing to sell her husband's body to her sister in order to obtain something that might have a chance of helping her. Each of these women had the thing that the other one desperately wanted. Leah desperately wanted Jacob's love, and Rachel had it. And Rachel desperately wanted children, and Leah had it. And the pursuit of their idols led them both down some paths and into some decisions that were outside of the will of God. They each take their servants and marry them off to their husband in an effort to try to one-up each other, in a chance to get ahead, so that these poor women, these servants could bear children that these sisters, Leah and Rachel, could then claim as their own, in an effort to try to grasp and to get a hold of this thing that they are so desperate for, this thing that they idolize. And you know what? Jacob never loved Leah the way he loved Rachel. And Rachel ends up losing her life bearing children. The portion of the story that we ended on was that Rachel has a son named Joseph, but on down the line, she ends up dying in childbirth with her son Benjamin, who would be the youngest of Jacob's sons. And in addition to the decisions that they've made that are outside of the will of God, the pursuit of their idols robbed them of their relationship with each other. These women were going to be together forever for the duration of their lives. Sisters didn't often get that opportunity. And I know it's weird that they're married to the same man, but generally, a woman would get married and then she would just go off with her husband, sometimes to a foreign land, and sometimes never see her family, her parents or siblings again. These women were going to be together for all of their lives, and they spent it wrapped up in jealousy and consumed with getting ahead of each other, consumed with being a little bit better than their sister. It robbed them of their relationship. Here's the thing. Idolatry is not just a biblical thing. I know we don't see people outside bowing down to golden calves like we read about so much in the Old Testament, but idolatry is a very real thing, and it's completely consuming our culture, and it's completely consuming people that are professing to be Jesus-loving and Jesus-following people. We find ourselves right now in the middle of this craziness in a really unique place, because this chaos that the world is in right now, this crazy, unexpected thing that we're in the middle of, has stripped away a lot of our idols. Jobs, wealth, sports, entertainment, affirmation, security, all those things are things that very possibly could be displacing God in our lives. And they're all things that we've either lost or are in danger of losing right now. I don't think we're ever going to be in a better place to address our idols. I don't think we're ever going to get a better opportunity to really make a commitment to putting God back in his rightful place in our lives. And I think right now what we need to do is we need to kind of take an inventory. Idolatry, like I said, it's not something that we think about. It's not something we talk about nowadays. But I think it'd be good for us to just stop and think about, what are some things that I'm making more important than God? Is it my job? Is it the pursuit of wealth? Is it the affirmation and the praise of others? Is it my need for security? Is it entertainment, sports, whatever it might be? What are we allowing to have more importance in our lives than God? Let's take a little inventory on that. And then let's look at some of the decisions we've made. Is our pursuit of idols leading us down paths, making decisions that are contrary to the will of God or that are outside of the will of God? And is our pursuit of these idols stealing relationships from us? Is it affecting our relationships with our spouses, with our children, with our families, with our friends, with our church family? These idols will steal your relationships. They'll steal your time and your focus and your energy. And this is a great time to take a look at these things. It's a great time to have an honest conversation with God and say, you know what? I've made some mistakes here. I've let some things be more important to me than you. It's a great opportunity for us to ask for forgiveness and to ask for the strength to do better from here on out. These idols are dangerous and idolatry is destructive. And so during this time, let's just take a little bit of time and attention and put it on whether or not we are letting things in our world displace God's role. What things are we letting have more importance than God? Let's take this time to make sure that God is in his rightful place in our lives, and that is on the throne of our hearts, alone, not sharing it with anything or anyone else. Hey guys, thanks for joining me for this round number 2 of Quarantine Bible Study. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, any discussion, anything like that, feel free to message me or post on here. I'm not sure where we're going after this. I'm not sure when it will be, hopefully sooner rather than later, but I'm really looking forward to it. Take care, and we'll see you next time.